Thank you. This meeting of the Board of Education is now called to order. I want to start by making sure all board members can hear. Terry?
Yes.
Thank you. Celeste?
Yes.
Thank you. Rusty?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Bo?
Yep, I can hear Randy.
Great. Joanne? Okay, she'll be calling in. And Kurt?
I'm here, Randy.
All right, very good. I'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance on behalf of the board. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business is to approve our agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda as presented?
Randy, the only thing I have is one additional item under the planned reports under the superintendent's report, and that's the energy management program update by Steve Phelps.
Okay. Is there a motion, please, to approve the agenda as amended?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make the motion that we approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there a second? Thank you, Terry. This is a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Droppers,
Yes.
Mr. Rathburn,
Yes.
Dr. Shelton Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Mrs. Novario,
Yes.
and Mr. Snyder.
Yes.
Very good. The motion passes. We'll proceed with our agenda as printed, and we'll go to the superintendent's report, please, Mark.
Thank you, Randy. We have, again, 4 items to present to you this evening. The first 2, Ron Herron will present, and that's a bond project update, and then a change order summary bond budget update. So, Ron, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, board members. I just have a short report for you tonight. First, on the construction front, at Central Middle School, we have almost completed at least all the fall landscaping work that we can get done before winter fully sets in. We'll have a few items that we need to continue in the spring there. The punch list items have ramped up now that we don't have students in the building, and still scheduled to be done by the end of the year. Black Box Theater, Choir, and Band are still scheduled to turn over the end of November. Current bus loop adjacent to on the north side of the building that we were using, that's an additional parking lot.
Ron, you went on mute there for some reason. Dan, do you have to unmute Ron, or can he do that himself?
He has to do that himself.
Okay, thank you.
Ron suggested we go on to the next report, and he'll come back in.
Okay. So our next report then would be the financial report from Paula Johnson. So Paula, you can do that. We'd appreciate it. Thank you. There you are.
Sure will. Good evening, Board of Ed. Tonight included in your board packet is our financial report through the month of October. 4 months of our fiscal year has now come to a close. Just a reminder, October is the first month that we do receive payment from Michigan Department of Education for our state aid payment. So let me hit some of the highlights for you. I want to apologize now in advance if some of my statements remind you of items that I touched on last month, because some of these items are the same. Local revenue is down compared to last year, and this is comprised of a couple different components. Our athletic gate receipts, as we touched on before, our pay to participate fees are down compared to last year. Our Curious Kids revenue is down due to the late start of the month of September for that program. And our testing fees are compared to last year are also down. Looking at the federal line item, we are way above what we were last year at this time, and that has to do with the federal coronavirus relief money that we've received, the 11P category, which equated to approximately $362 per pupil. That's the federal money that we're working towards spending between now and the end of December. And that has to be spent in the 2021 school year. So that will be amended in the budget amendment that we're working on. Moving on to expenditures. Basic programs compared to last year is slightly up, and this is spread between several different categories of items that roll up to basic programs. Salaries are up a little, insurance costs are up a little, and naturally our retirement costs went up a little. So that's what's causing that to skew right now. Moving down under support services for pupil support, the majority of this increase compared to last year is relating to improvement of instruction that we're doing with coronavirus relief funds. Moving down to school administration line item under support, that is up compared to last year, and that is due to the salary changes for the principals and other people that roll up in this category related to the changes that we made for steps with the retro effect back to the start of their contract. Moving on down to operations and maintenance, that is still showing in down compared to last year at this time. And I thought that the Grand Rapids Building Services issue would have corrected itself by now, but that check actually was cut last week. So we're not going to see everything get caught up with Grand Rapids Building Services due to the timing of that contract until the next board report that I'll prepare for you. So that's the reason why operations and maintenance is down. Transportation, we are still seeing a reduction in driver's wages, in bus fleet insurance, repair costs, and fuel. And to other support services, this is comprised of our athletic program, our athletic program, our technology department, and our HR department. And basically, athletic costs are coming in less than where we were at last year at this time, obviously, based on programs that we can and cannot offer at this time. The community service line item, basically that rolls up to our community enrichment. And we are not offering very many community enrichment activities, so that's showing coming in a lot lower this year compared to last year. And then finally, our childcare services, I touched on this on the revenue side as well. We didn't start that program in full force until September, so those costs are coming in lower for the month of October compared to this time last year. So all in all, those are the highlights that I have to touch on for you for the financial report for the month of October. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Paula.
Thanks, Paula. Ron, looks like you're back with us to finish your report. And then when you get through with those two items, if you could please introduce Steve, and we'll move into his portion as well.
Okay, my apologies. I will pick up where I left off. We had planned on paying the stable, weather permitting. Looks like if the weather doesn't change, we probably won't get to that until the spring. and on the central campus. So unless we have a stretch of warmer weather here, we'll probably delay that until spring. At West Middle School, all major punch list items have been completed. Remaining items will be completed while the students are not in the building, and they're scheduled to be done over Christmas break as well, to be completed by Christmas break. We testing and balancing for our HVA system. The final inspection is scheduled to happen shortly. At Northern Auditorium, exterior brick is complete now. Roofing is complete. We have a temporary enclosure in that building with temporary heat at this time. Ceiling rough ends above the pool are going in over the next 8 weeks. And we'll, when we get the moisture levels in that space, we'll start to the right moisture levels. We'll start to paint the ceilings in that facility as well. Metal siding and prep work has started, and the pool mechanical room and rough ends are ongoing, and the locker room rough ends are ongoing. And so that's all I have for you on the construction side. Any questions? If not, I'll move to the financial update. As you can see, there were no change orders on the cutoff when we ran this report. This is change order 33, of which there are 0 change orders. So our stated contingency remains at $1,751,548 for this time period. I will say that there are more change orders coming. They just didn't make this cutoff. And so on your change order 34 report, you'll have a few more change orders coming your way. And that's it on the financial report. Any questions there? If not, I'm gonna have Steve get himself ready. He's going to be sharing with you our energy management annual report, which you've been familiar with over the last few years, and I won't steal Steve's thunder. He does an excellent job of managing our energy management, and really it's a great service for the district, has been over the years, and he'll share some numbers I think that you'll be impressed with. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve at this time. Are you there, Steve?
Yes, thank you, Ron. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right, let me get the presentation up. Okay, can everybody see the presentation?
Yes, I think we're on the second page. There we go.
There we go. Okay, so going to basically page 2. This is our cumulative cost avoidance from program start through October of 2020. As you can see, we're at $7,896,000 in cost avoidance, which is very good. The next slide is our fiscal year 19-20 cost avoidance. As you can see, we did really well this year with a 45.7% cost avoidance and total savings of $1,063,000. Obviously, the COVID shutdown had some to do with that. We were on track to be at about $850,000 this year prior to COVID, but that allowed us to obviously shut more things off while there was no one in the buildings in March and April and May. So we were able to save over $1 million this year, which I think is really good. The next slide shows the last 10 years in cost avoidance by month. And as you can see this year, you can see the big spike there in March when we shut down for the COVID thing for the rest of the year. Another thing this slide indicates is as we've progressed from the start of the program through this year, you can see that we are trending more and more every year as we find more things that we can save on and so forth. So some of our current and future energy saving projects that I'll be working on are our two new middle schools. North Middle we had a whole year on, and Central Middle will be starting. Working on fine tuning the HVAC and electrical equipment to operate at peak efficiency. And one thing that we didn't really get a chance to do that we will need to do at North Middle and Central Middle, both of those buildings tend to overcool when the air conditioning is running, and I didn't really get a chance to do much with that this year because we weren't really operating that much when we needed the air conditioning. So that's something I will be working on this coming year to better tune the two new North Middle and Central Middle. West Middle School, where we have full DDC control of now as of basically last month. We've gotten all of the pneumatic controls out of there, so we have better control of the whole building. And as that gets turned over to us, I'll be working on that building as far as adjusting things as well. We also have a new heating plant and with two new boilers, and those boilers are going to allow us to run in a lead lag configuration as opposed to both of them running full as in the past. So that will allow us to save a fair amount of gas, I think, over the winter, not maintaining as high a temperature in both boilers. And then district-wide, something I've been working on daily is schedules and adjusting equipment where students are, trying to get as much fresh air into the buildings as we can where students are, and of course staff, and ventilating the building properly for our COVID mandates. While we're in this virtual learning mode only there, we've been able to turn off some more equipment due to the fact that there's no one in some of the large spaces, like such as gyms and that kind of thing. So we've been able to realize some more savings during this time of virtual learning as well. I think that's pretty much all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Steve, this is Bo Snyder. No questions, but this is just a great report. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
And Steve, thank you for your leadership in this area and for all the savings you brought us. We sure appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all I have for the superintendent's report, Randy.
Okay, we'll move to board education, our return to learn plan.
As you noticed on your agenda, this item is split up into two separate parts of the agenda. The first is the presentation, and it's kind of a high-level update of the plan that you received back in November, and just updating the information that was presented then. And then later on the agenda, under action items, you have the opportunity to approve the plan. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Dr. Pascal and Mr. Huber to present the update. Gentlemen.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent Beelang. Mike's going to put up the presentation here in a couple seconds. On the 9th, we presented some of the recommendations in terms of the changes at the secondary level in terms of our instructional model. So tonight, kind of our overview and purpose, we want to provide you the details as to where we've been and what that input processes look like. We want to talk about what the changes mean in terms of positioning ourselves for second semester and the options that it may bring. We're going to look at the benefits, some of the challenges, and some of the specific issues that have come up as we began the work. And then we'll highlight towards the end the purpose of the ECLP, which is the Extended COVID Learning Plan, and the Preparedness Plan, as you guys know, is the Return to Learn Plan, and just make sure that we're on the same page in terms of what those serve and what the different purposes are. So in terms of input processes, I think I'll start by saying, just so folks know, nothing's done in isolation, and there's not one individual that makes any decision for the entire school district. I think that's important for folks to know. These are collective decisions. They're based off of a lot of work that's happened over the last few months. We've collected quite a bit of data from our stakeholders to land on a recommendation that we thought was best for kids. Okay, so when we talk about meetings and feedback, we've heard from our PTO presidents, some of the conversations we've had. We've addressed team leaders. We weekly meet with principals. Our exec team meets as a weekly meeting. We've met with the scheduling groups a few times, both at the middle school and the high school level. And our MPSS lead team meets weekly and talks about these proposed changes and the impacts it has on support systems of our students. And you guys know we've surveyed families, we've surveyed staff. We continue to look at local and regional K through 12 school districts. We also look at what our comparator schools are doing. And of course, most importantly, we look at the health data, both from the state of Michigan, Kalamazoo County, the city of Portage, and then the COVID rates in terms of our students and our staff. So in terms of what we're looking at with the proposed changes and how that positions us for second semester, we feel it allow us to consider and plan for a limited face-to-face option. And of course, that's if the health conditions permit. You know, all this is predicated on it being safe to bring students back into our secondary buildings, and we understand that. We presented on a matrix last time we were here in terms of how we would make decisions on closures. The supports that students would have in terms of learning needs, we feel would be more effectively. Explores multiple modes of instruction to meet the needs of all students. We understand that fully remote isn't for everyone. And it's not due to any lack of effort from our staff. Our staff's doing a wonderful job within the parameters. It's just we know that we can't engage and support all kids in that mode. It allows us to transition back to fully remote if necessary. And then also allows us to offer this model in phase 5. And it's not something that we talk about a lot, but I think it's important to address tonight is if we were to change as a state or our region in terms of phase 5, we're going to have families that are going to continue to want to go virtually. And so without the ability to make a change now, we're going to continue to just offer virtual for the remainder of the year for all kids. And it's not something that if we change to phase 5 and we say all kids go back, that's not something that we can say because we've committed to offering that virtual program to our secondary families as well as our elementary families for the remainder of the year. So I think that's important to know, and it's not something that we've talked a whole lot about. In terms of potential benefits, it adds the face-to-face option for secondary students. We said in our Return to Learn plan that we would give all of our families something that they needed and they want it. Right now, we lack the face-to-face option at the secondary level. It extends the best supports for students who have learning needs. We talk a lot about the social emotional support for students and the inability sometimes for folks remotely to connect with their peers as well as their teachers and staff. We believe that it'll increase class engagement and the potential academic success, particularly for those that don't thrive in a virtual environment. We've heard a lot from students in terms of the daily screen time. For some of them, it's very hard for them to keep up, and it's not their best mode of learning. So we feel that it will increase the equity for students who struggle learning virtually and kind of level the playing field, so to speak, in terms of students' ability to be successful within our modalities. And then we have challenges. You know, it may change some part or all of a student's schedule and staff schedules. We know that. Course offerings may be changed or limited due to staffing, something we talked about in the presentation last time. Staff, including scheduling teams. We know it's going to be an intense time for them if this was approved from now until January. There's no doubt about that. It's not that this stuff can't be done. It's just it's going to create a lot of work for folks, and we're mindful of that. The lunches and passing time challenges, we talked a little bit about that in the presentation on the 9th. We got to continue to look at that to make sure folks are safe and that we're in the parameters that are given. Our cleaning protocols are going to have to be consistent in our secondary buildings, and they will look a little differently than they have in the past. and as well transportation and food services procedures and processes. They'll need to be developed to return to increased service, particularly if we're adding lunchtimes sessions within our middle and our high school. Mike, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about responding to some of those specific issues that we've been hearing, and maybe some of the things that we're talking about in terms of how we're going to solve some of those.
Certainly. So we know that we're going to have some students who will need to move between face-to-face who need to quarantine. And that has presented challenges for our elementary, and we know it would present challenges as well at secondary. Our plan there is to keep students asynchronously connected and to utilize a hybrid or high flex as best as possible to continue to engage them in the classwork that they need for that. We know that we have the ability to record lessons and to deliver some of our content online, and we want to continue that. The student scheduling, there's a lot of intense amount of work went into that process thus far. We're gathering more data, which will start based on your approval tonight, on which families will select a face-to-face or virtual. It's important for us to get that so we can determine even what student schedules look like for second semester. We know that there'll be a lot that goes into those conversations to create the schedules. And so we want to get them as correct as possible. So we know that that's something that we've had a lot of questions about. We know continuing a 4-day synchronous and 1-day asynchronous school week has been asked a lot. Why are we presenting a model that continues that? Well, we still know that teachers need to develop and provide high quality materials and get feedback to students as much as possible. We're finding, as everyone is in this virtual environment, if we still have students that are learning virtually, we know the investment of time and energy from our staff increases. And so we know we need to provide some space and time for them to do that. It'll also provide an opportunity for students who need the extra help to get that connection with their teachers. So that's an opportunity for us to make sure that we're fulfilling what we can do to close gaps with students. Then it allows teacher teams and support teams to continue to meet to develop the best instruction for learning. We know that on those Fridays right now, we have groups of teachers that are meeting together to accomplish what they need to develop lessons or to talk about how they're doing their work, as well as for teams to meet to process through whether it's an IEP or to be able to get together to talk about how that learning went that week and create change for the following week. We know that we've been asked a lot about providing professional learning for staff, and we'll continue to do that. We do use Fridays for that. That is certainly a time that we offer those opportunities. Sometimes they're right on target in terms of the time and day on Fridays, but we try and make sure we use our Fridays wisely for both our virtual and face-to-face instructors to use that technology. Especially when it just comes to how we deliver instruction at that time. And then we also use it to teach specific technology tools. So we've had trainings on Google Classroom, any of the Google suite of products, Skyward, and I can list a bunch of content-specific software. We continue to support those things, whether that's Paul and Jessica working, or Mackenzie, or myself. There's a handful of other folks that have been sharing their learnings along the way to ensure that all of our teachers are ready to go. So those are some of those specific things we've been looking at. Our ECLP and preparedness plan, we wanted to kind of make sure that you understood, as well as the public watching, that these two plans kind of originate in different sources, as well as kind of why they're separate. The preparedness plan approved by you in August really articulates our instructional model for K-12, and we can make adjustments inside of that plan. But that's what we're bringing to you in this proposal, was kind of changing that to broaden what we do, as well as add that matrix and be able to make some choices there. The ECLP, that extended COVID learning plan, was something that was accepted by the ISD, and it includes our monthly reports on attendance and engagement, as well as our year-long goals and associated measurement data. And so with this, we kind of want to start to tie together the components of these two plans and why they have different sources. And that's one of the things we wanted to do in this process, was kind of ensure that these are connected. And then lastly, I would add, I spoke with Susan Livingston today, and she wanted to make sure that we had let you know, as well as our community know, that we have free breakfast and lunch. It will continue through June 11th of this school year. So that food service will be extended to 7 days a week as well, starting November 30th. And the Thursday meal pickup includes Saturday and Sunday meals. That'll happen for the weekends as well, straight through the end of the school year. So that's kind of the update from us. Appreciate guys being able to listen and the work that's gone into this from so many teams and so many people. Dr. Pasco, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think we provided all the content the last couple board meetings. Tonight was just to kind of give an update on some of the things that we've been hearing and kind of what our responses would be to those. But other than that, I think we did our best to explore, talk to the stakeholders that were out there, collect the data and present it to you guys so that we can make an informed decision collectively. And that was our role. So I think at this point, we'll put it back to the board and Mark as to questions or comments.
I don't have any additional comments at this time. Thank you guys for putting that out there, and I guess open it up to board members for questions.
I just want to say thank you for all your work, guys. It's not easy.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. Appreciate that.
I had my hand up here, but I guess nobody saw that, so I'll just chime right in. Could you go back to your slide, Mike Huber, about quarantining and really explain what you mean by asynchronous learning and exactly how that would work? I have some big concerns about this because I can see at the secondary level that quarantine could be happening any number of times in any number of classes for kids. And this could be something that happens over and over and over for a particular student. So if you could give me a better idea how that would work, I would appreciate it.
Certainly. There's a few things that we know and we're aiming at. With elementary classrooms, because of the movement in the classroom, it's difficult to quarantine a number of students from that classroom at the elementary level. So generally the health department makes their recommendation on quarantining entire classrooms just to be extra safe. At the secondary level, what we're hearing a number of schools are doing is with seating charts, whether that's in the cafeteria or in the classroom, that quarantine can be limited to the 4 to 6 people that are nearby where that student sits. And that would help a class not have to quarantine everyone. So that's one aspect of how quarantine looks different. And then for those 4 to 6 students, obviously the part that matters is the instruction in that classroom. And so for that particular length of time, whether it's 6 students or whether it's the entire class, there'll probably be a need to shift the instruction for those students to ensure that we're still able to meet their learning targets. And so whether that means that particular classroom and that instructor start to add things asynchronously, and by that we mean, so there are elements that are posted on the Google Classroom that that student or students could complete outside of the class time, and or that class could use a hybrid or high flex. Thus the teacher may say, okay, for this 2-week period, we've got these 4 students, we're gonna set up that camera in the corner, and I've got 20 in the classroom and these 4 at home. And so we would be doing that instruction in that high flex mode. And by high flex means hybrid flexible. It means there's students learning in both modes. We've kind of added a little language to that to define high flex to mean that flexible mode we were initially calling hybrid before. And so for some amount of time, that teacher, depending on the number of students, depending on what the course is and the content there, would be utilizing one of those kind of strategies to ensure that those students are still engaged with their learning. Dr. Pasco, anything to add to that question?
No, but I think your slide about some of the professional learning that you and Paul have been doing with the teachers in terms of how to record portions of the lesson and then uploading those to Google Classroom, I think that's going to be an important part outside of just loading assignments and then bringing people into the hybrid high flex model. I think being able to have those videos uploaded and to have students be able to come back to those, I think is extremely important. So those are all ways that we would keep kids engaged if they were out for 12 or 24 days. And we've got some experience with that at the elementary level, like Mike said. We do know connecting kids into a virtual section, that's probably not going to happen. You know, we're not always on the same scope and sequence in terms of where we're at in particular courses. So we feel like this will be a better model or approach to keep kids engaged and keep that continuity of learning, regardless if they have to go out on quarantine or not.
And are you saying that you talked about the specific class where a student was, the kids that, the 4 to 6 kids or the whole class, whoever it is, how would that be handled in their other classes? Would they also have teachers that are teaching kids in their classroom and kids at home if members of that class are quarantined?
They could be, certainly. So that is.
So then, in essence, we're saying that at any time, or maybe most of the time, teachers could be doing that. They could be teaching kids in front of them and kids at home. So that sounds a whole lot like what was proposed a month ago. And I'm not trying to be adversarial. I really, really appreciate all the work that you've done to try to come up with another option. I'm just trying to see how that's different than what was proposed last time.
Yeah, there's no doubt it's a difficult conversation to have. How do we prevent any hybrid or high flex from happening? Which is why we included it in there as one of the options. We know ultimately, even with elementary students who are in an in-person classroom who need to quarantine, that there can be difficulties getting all that learning done because we can't move them directly to one of the virtual classes. And at the elementary level, that looks remarkably different for them to build those relationships, those classes. But those relationships still exist at the secondary level. They just look different, and we're maybe a little bit more tolerant at the high school level of maybe switching a teacher or needing to be in an uncomfortable environment for a bit. So it is a risk, and that would happen not just in the 1 hour, but in the 6 or 7 hours that they're in. So if there are ways through seating charts that we can reduce that, of course, we would want to do that, especially with cafeteria things. We don't know how many students we would be looking at in terms of a quarantine when this happens. So it's hard for us to predict. We have buildings in our district right now that have had 0 cases. Had a handful. And so we know that that can be something that is a challenge. We also know that sometimes students will be gone and 48 hours will have gone by, and then they will test positive. And so we rewind with the health department and do the contact tracing to support that. Ultimately, we want people safe, and that's what creates these crucial instructional considerations for us.
Yeah, I'm just aware that in some of the information that went out to parents, that it pretty much told them if their child was quarantined or sick, they'd be on their own. And that's a big concern for me. One other question for Mike Pasco. You talked about the schedules and the need to redo the schedules. And I think there is a lot of uneasiness about this, that it involves everyone redoing their schedule. So any relationships that have been forged with teachers, classmates, whatever, potentially could be changed. Some kids may have to go on Michigan Virtual to get the classes that they need. Some classes may not be offered at all. And some classes will be both in person and virtual because that's the only thing that teacher can do. It seems like, well, it's been said that there's going to be no flexibility in terms of changing minds once these things are selected. And then there's the big if we can ever go back, or when we can, are we going to implode all of the progress that we've made for a big if? So I'm just wondering if the risk of the schedule changes are worth the big if.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, we'll know when families make the selections and we go through the scheduling process. We know that there's going to be some disruption. There's no doubt about that. How big of an impact, we won't know in terms of seeing the numbers. But Terry, I'm wondering what communication was put out that informed folks that we would not be supporting them if they went on to quarantine, because I don't think there's anything that we had put out that would have stated such.
The communications that I saw that went from the buildings to the community to parents did say that.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. So thanks for sharing.
It's been mentioned to me by several people that there is great concern about that. Why would anybody send their child for face-to-face if in fact they got sick and there would be no supports for them at home? So that's the impression that parents have.
Okay.
And that's not okay.
Yeah, no, that's definitely it's definitely a false perception, and it's not accurate information. So I'm glad that you brought that to our attention. What Mike had articulated is exactly what we would want to do, is continue to engage those students as much as possible, include that hybrid high flex where we could, put those live lessons asynchronously on Google Classroom, and then utilize those Fridays to better support our students and kind of recap the week. Yeah, we would have every intent to have that continuity of learning as folks were on quarantine. So thanks for sharing that. I just wanted to make sure I understood where that was coming from. And back to the scheduling piece. Yeah, it's a lot of work, Terry. There's no doubt about it. But we're all about trying to bring some students back. We have over 50% of the families that we serve that would like a face-to-face option. And this is what it's all about right here, is if we don't do that now, we really limit ourselves in terms of staying remotely for the remainder of the school year. And that's difficult, knowing that we're going to be going all the way to the beginning of June.
Just wondering, do you plan to survey parents again? Because with the resurgence of the percentages, I think some people may have changed their minds, or they may also have changed their minds based on the structure of this plan. Would you consider surveying them again, or is it just going to be make a choice, virtual or face-to-face?
Yeah, I think unfortunately time is not on our side right now. We understand the amount of work that needs to happen in order to pull this off before the end of January. I believe January 25th is the change of the semester. So to send out another survey and analyze those results at this point, I'm not sure if it's in the timeline. But I understand where you're coming from and the impact that maybe our current environment may have on some of those choices. Again, obviously that would come out on the selection forms. We would see that not so much in a form of a survey, but in terms of folks making a decision.
Mike, this is Rusty. I think it's important that people know, if, as Terry said, people might have concerns about coming back now where they maybe felt different, a month ago. But it's important that everybody understand, if situation was as it is now, we wouldn't be going back January 25th or whatever date that may be. So it's important that the community know, if you do choose to send your child to in building, most likely it wouldn't be happening in a situation as we're in right now.
Yeah, that's a good point, Rusty. Obviously, all this is predicated on our external environment and how safe it is to have kids return to our secondary buildings. But what would happen is the schedule changes, as Terry had alluded to. That would all have to be said and done before the change of semester. Even if we had to start a couple weeks virtually, the schedule process would have been solidified by that point. But you're right, Rusty. It doesn't necessarily mean we start on January 25th or 26th and implement this if it's not safe. And we understand that.
This is Joanne, and I'm sitting here patiently. When is the end of the semester date versus the end of the marking period? Does that differentiate?
The end of the first marking period was at the start of November. The end of the first semester is January 2nd, which is a Friday. And that end of the first semester is also the end of the second marking period for secondary schools.
Just like Terry, moving our students and moving a teacher, moving their fellow students, moving perhaps a building. And we just recently seen to take advantage of a couple day close. I just don't know how we can ping pong our students and our teachers on such short notice. I don't know if it's better off to look at a vote based upon a rock solid date where we are in time and hold it until community health tells us to change. I'm really struggling with this this timing situation and what we're burdening our teachers with to set a schedule several times. Thanks.
There's no doubt it is difficult with the time, as Dr. Pasco said. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time to at least plan to do it. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to commit to doing it and that we're locked into making those shifts. But if we want to have the option, we need to be able to take action now. And then we can wait for the health conditions to change if that's the case. So if we do adjust schedules and create this a new second semester, and then we can't meet due to the health considerations for another 3 or 4 weeks for in-person, then we can wait until that time. But we've already built the schedules to accommodate a return to a limited face-to-face. That's kind of part of our choice in making these actions right now in the preparedness plan.
Hey, Mike and Michael, this is Bo. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Bo. We can hear you.
I want to ask a question, and I'm struggling with the terminology because I don't want to use the term locked in, because I know with whatever we do,
yeah,
with face-to-face, it may not happen just based on the pandemic and, the community levels of disease. But can you help me understand what regarding our face-to-face thinking are we pretty certain of in terms of the model? And what is still flexible, and kind of what are you still kind of open to learning and figuring out and kind of getting more feedback as we move through kind of the weeks ahead? I mean, can you help me as a trustee who isn't in it at your level, kind of what appears to be more certain and what are the details that still, can be tweaked just based on what you learn?
Go ahead, Dr. Basco.
I know meeting with the principals on a weekly basis, I think the logistics of the day, keeping folks safe, looking at the passing times, looking at how we were going to do lunch sessions, looking at the hours, the number, the square footage in the room and how many students could be in there. We looked at what the virtual sections could look like. I think some of that stuff is, we've vetted a lot of that type of stuff. I think, the unknown is just really the numbers of who would want what and what that impact would be on the master schedule and the amount of effort and change or impact that it will have. I think that's one of the most important things in this whole conversation, is that it's the biggest unknown in it, but it's the one thing that's going to drive all the work, and it's also going to dictate some of the unknowns and bring answers to some of the unknowns, if that makes sense. So, what can be offered, who's going to teach what, things like that is all predicated on, what our families and our students end up choosing ultimately on a choice form if the changes were to be approved.
Yeah.
Mike, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
No, I would just say, I know we can't control the health situations, that those are things that are in there. It's a little, it seems simpler at first to start to say, this is what we want to do. And then when we get into the the details of it, which has been the last, basically 4 weeks, almost nonstop, to kind of try and tear into understanding the plans. What becomes difficult in those scheduling desires is which populations, and we'll select the in-person or select the remain face-to-face. Those numbers are really the crux of the conversation. I think there's other little details in there too that we don't know, like we're not sure how we will handle staffing changes, or what kind of moves a staff illness cause for us. We know the number one factor with keeping buildings open is really about the staff, not just the students. So that's another factor that could be in there that'll make things difficult to be predictive.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, from a trustee's perspective, kind of these big things that you still don't know and you're still kind of learning is, which parents and students are going to choose what. And then, I mean, I sort of heard like, what ultimately is the impact going to be on the schedule? And I guess, I mean, could it be kind of an inflection point where if you get to a point where it just looks like the impact on the schedule is something that's kind of mind-boggling? And I think, I mean, that goes back to Terry's point, and, the trustees, we're starting to get communications from concerned parents on that. I mean, it's just very much something on their mind. And I just wanted to underscore that. And I mean, and frankly, I mean, as a trustee, I would not wade in there, but I mean, I lack the qualifications to wade in on that. And frankly, I'm not sure who knows the magic answer now, but it's a point of concern.
Thanks, Mr. Snyder. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Mike, it's Rusty here. Talking about that impact as Bo described it. If it was like if the task was insurmountable, is there any way we could do a district-wide high flex plan with the current situation, our current classroom situations, not shaking everything up and just going to a high flex or hybrid, whatever you all like to call that?
Mm-hmm.
Because this could be, we've heard rumors that there's potential issues with Skyward. There's potential issues, shaking things up, and so for minimal disruption, would there be a possibility of high flex?
Yeah, I think the concern, Rusty, is we received 2 letters from both high schools signed by pretty much the majority of both staff going against the high flex and hybrid. So that raises some concern is by keeping the current schedule and saying we're going to do a high flex hybrid, it goes completely against what those letters talked about, as well as the feedback we got from families to say, hey, that hybrid high flex model as your primary model has a lot of negative impact on instructional delivery and quality. And we heard that, and we presented that to you guys several meetings in terms of just bringing that data back to you. So if it's not an impossibility, sure, we could easily do that. But is that what the majority of teachers want to do? And do they still believe what they believed a month ago when we received those letters in terms of the pushback? That's just a question that's out there.
So, Michael, I kind of want to respond to that. I think maybe that as much work as this has gone into this, it has enabled the teachers to see that this isn't the best answer either. I heard from one teacher who said their entire department was now more supportive to a hybrid model. And I have a letter from a parent that I got today that, lays it out all really well, talking about the flexibility of doing the high flex or the hybrid, that we can keep the schedules we have, that when it's safe, whenever that is, we could quickly implement getting kids into the buildings. And then it doesn't really matter if it's your 50% or 20% or 10%. Whoever wants to come comes. If teachers are open to that, I think we all were supportive of trying to find something that would work for everybody, and nothing's going to be ideal for everybody, but it just seems like there's so much disruption, so many questions, so many kids learning in all these different modalities. Even they're supposed to be face-to-face, they might have to take a class on Michigan virtual. There isn't a flexibility to move in or out of in-person versus virtual. It's just a lot of stuff that I'm trying to really grab onto, and I'm having a hard time doing that. And the benefits that you presented were great ones, but the benefits that you presented will exist regardless of whether we're doing a hybrid model or this model. So yeah, you did say at the last meeting that hybrid you were going to keep on the table. So I'm asking too, is that still on the table?
Hey, Terry, while Michael and Mike think about your question, could I just try to restate what you said kind of in my brain? And it might be, and see, and this is where this even becomes harder than we even imagine. But it's the whipsaw effect. And it's, will people change their minds 6 weeks down the road when the planning progresses and we begin to see the reality of the fork we went down that they told us to go down? They told us to go down this fork. And now we're there and we're staring at some of the possible fallout there. And well, might we walk back and go down the different fork that still lets us have a face-to-face option that might have been different? And I just want to say this with all the respect in the world. I do not know what the right answer is here. And I'm not suggesting any hint of it. But anyway, I think, Terry, from your question, it's maybe people would reconsider that given kind of the realities of the model that we're looking at. So anyway, I just wanted to restate it from my brain's perspective.
And certainly, again, no disrespect for all the work that has gone into this. It's mind-boggling what you have attempted to achieve, and I totally respect that. I'm just thinking that the outcome we're looking for is what's the best thing for kids. And with all of these questions and conflicts, and I just think the social emotional disruption of it all could just send some kids over the edge. And that's not what we're trying to achieve. So those are my issues.
And just to make one more thing clear, this is Rusty, sorry. The last plan that we would want would be to do what we're doing right now. I would definitely would not want to stay all virtual. So boy, if we can make this proposal work, but if it turns into just a lot of hassle for a lot of people, I would really like us to go to a high flex or high virtual. I think we've learned more about that a little bit. I mean, they called it hybrid, a month and a half ago, and now it's called high flex. I don't know if they're different or if that delivery has changed and people have found better practices. But it sounds like we're going to be doing a lot of high flex or hybrid anyways, whether, if kids are going to get sick and beyond that, we talked about a child getting, being contact tracing. Well, he could be in that classroom and come back for 3 more days and then be in the wrong place again and then be contact traced again and be sent home for, another 14 days, or their parent gets sick, then that child is home. So there's just a lot of moving parts here that scare me.
Hey, and this is Bo. I'll give you more time to think about it. Will we just talk more about this? I intend to support the plan tonight because that's the plan that gives us the shot at having that face-to-face option for secondary starting with the second semester, and I think that's really important. I think I'm just encouraging you to do what's almost the impossible thing, which is continue to fix the plane while you're flying it. And you're doing all this work to rebuild the schedules because that's the fork that we're headed down now. And that might be the right fork. It might be the most feasible fork. But I'm kind of asking you in the third half of your brain is do keep yourself in a learning mode in case it appears that this other fork should be something that we should continue to look at. And as I'm saying that, I'm just thinking about how incredibly difficult that would be. So I'm saying it with full understanding of this. This is just so hard to balance, and you guys have my utmost respect, and the plan will get a yes vote for me tonight. So, all right, I'll be quiet now. Thanks, guys.
I don't know, Mike, if you want to add. I know from day one we said no plan was perfect. I do remember saying that quite a few times. But I do know we need kids back in school. I do know that. So for us to not leave tonight with the ability to do something that allows us to bring our secondary students back to the building, we would be not doing what we set out to do at the beginning of the year, and that was to make sure that we're serving and giving and meeting a need to all of our families, at least that one essential need. And for almost 50% of our families, that one essential need is to get their secondary students back in the classrooms. I can't lose sight of that. I also can't lose sight of all of the negative response we got to the hybrid model as the primary instructional mode. I don't forget those conversations, and I don't forget all those bullet points. So, you know, it's weighing the option. Is it what's more important, or what has more impact or weight? Is it the impact on schedules and maybe having to limit some things and maybe not having that continuity of a teacher? Or does that have more weight, or does the negative instructional delivery and quality in terms of offering a hybrid as a primary option, which is what we heard, does that carry more weight? So what's the less of the two evils, so to speak? And that's some of the things, Bo, that we continue to contemplate. You know, it's what has the most impact, what carries most weight. Would people prefer this, or would they prefer that? And that's just a constant conversation and things that we always have to, you know, discuss and work through. But, you know, we landed it with this proposal and this preparedness change. We landed on this based off of all the stuff that we presented and we collected. You know, a lot of this other stuff has kind of come up in the 11th hour, so to speak. So, you know, can we be flexible? I want to do what's best for kids. If it means that once we get the selection forms back and we see that maybe this is it's just too overwhelming for our schedule teams and there's just too many complications, then maybe we start engaging teachers. I just don't know where teachers are across the board in terms of accepting a hybrid or a high flex model as the primary instructional mode, because the last time we surveyed them, over 80% of them did not want that. You know what I mean? So that still sticks with me. That's the most recent collective data that we got, you know, from our instructional staff. And if that's changed, then, you know, then it's changed. But we don't have that collective data that represents that right now. We have, you know, like you said, Terry, we have some emails and we have some concerns, like we do no matter what decision or no matter what direction we go in. And I get that. So yeah, it's not easy. But I think at the heart of all this is an attempt to get those who want their students back into our secondary buildings, doing that at the right time, but just allowing us the opportunity when it's the right time to prepare for it. You know, that's the big conversation here. So I don't know, Mike, I think there's a lot of flexibility in us. I mean, we're not set in stone in a lot of stuff. We know that we have to be flexible in 2021. This whole school year and life has been about change and just adapting to that. So, you know, we're not, this is just a plan that was developed based off of all the stuff that we had collected, I guess is the best way to put it. And it would allow us the opportunity to start planning to bring our students back for those who want it. And it's not perfect, and there's no doubt about that.
That's why we open added, you know, a lot of different options in the scheduling choices for this. That's why we can, you know, offer things like looking at what it looks like to have a northern student at central or a west student north middle in order to meet what our families need. So it isn't that a high flex wasn't on that list. If you remember, we set up about 4 different options there that we thought were appropriate. And based on all the feedback we got, we knew that inevitably there would be some classes that need that, or some situations that would need high flex. And so we did that. But Dr. Pasco has it right with this idea of we need to have students back for those families that need that. And we will, if we can do that safely, then we want to make sure we offer that opportunity.
Yeah, gentlemen, I would just say I so appreciate this discussion. The plan has my support tonight. I appreciate the dialogue.
Yeah, thank you guys for the questions. I know they're not easy.
And guys, it's Rusty again. Sorry. I just want to be clear that I want kids back in school, in the buildings, whatever that looks like. If we start getting into a situation where we're pounding a square peg through a round hole, then we got to switch gears and find that round hole, and that round hole may be hybrid. From what I understand, people feel like the whole thing has changed. Some of it was even maybe the delivery last month and a half ago. There was some situations. So the board, we never really fully investigated that, I think, as a board. And we had that presentation, I think, the September 28th meeting, and then we all know what happened. So I want to make sure we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater on that one too. So my only point would be, don't be pounding square pegs through round holes, and keep all options open.
Yeah, I like that, Rusty. I think it comes down to the opportunity to begin the work, right? And follow the plan that was proposed, and like you said, if it's deemed to be just an impossibility and we need to look at some different options, I don't think we're the team that wouldn't look at those different options if it was to reach the ultimate goal of allowing some of our students back into our classrooms. So we feel that it is feasible in terms of the impact. Again, we won't know until we get those selection forms and figure out who wants what and what that means in terms of teacher and student schedules. So Rusty, I don't disagree with what you're saying, and I think we need to have an element of some flexibility as we go.
And just one thing to add for all board members, I'm the only board member with kids in high school, and it's painful at times. It's painful to watch your kids suffer. They're hurting, and I can promise you, my kids have some but I'm going to pat myself on the back, but they got some pretty good parental support. When not all kids have what they have. My wife and I do everything we can to provide extra and distractions. So they understand this is different, but we're making the best of it. But I don't think all kids have it like mine do. And I can tell you, there's times that we're struggling. A lot of families are struggling. Nobody's set up for this, and we just got to find the best way to get kids to the building so they learn. So that's it.
Thanks, Rusty.
Michael, could you explain a little bit about the town halls that are planned and what we hope to accomplish by those?
Mike, you want to give them a little more information as to the conversation with the Ps as to how they wanted to set those up?
Certainly. There's at least one town hall for every middle school. The last time I checked the chart, there are a handful of them for each of the high schools. And so it's an opportunity for parents to come in and to be able to ask questions with the principals, to be able to talk about the plan, talk about some of the limits of the plans that are there, and to be able to get more feedback in detail prior to them making a selection for the virtual or the face-to-face option that we have. So those will be going on. I believe the first ones start on Monday after Thanksgiving, so November 30th, and they go through the 3rd, depending on the high school where they are. So those are all available. A lot of them are being done virtually in multiple spaces. I don't think we have any. They were talking about some outdoor ones, but I think the weather's just not going to be conducive to having an outdoor town hall like that.
So after those town halls, hopefully parents will have their questions answered, and then really they will vote on the plan by the enrollment choice they choose for their student.
Correct. So we're going to do that all through Skyward. We have that survey all set up right now. We have instructions built for them to complete that. It's very similar to what the elementary schools did for selecting in-person or virtual learning for those grades.
And without approval of the preparedness plan, we have nothing in place then that's required by the state for us to move to some form of in-person learning at the secondary level. Is that correct?
Yep, I believe that's correct, and it's also the conversation around if we ever did move into phase 5, and that would allow us to bring all students back. But the reality is not all students and families will want to come back, and so if that happens, say mid-second semester, and we weren't prepared to make the shifts, we just wouldn't be able to pull that off. You know, this is kind of that timing that we talked about. So we'd really be stuck, I think, in this model, a full virtual model, for the remainder of the year, even if we moved into phase 5. So I think that's something else that we need to think about. Is I'm not sure if we want to inhibit ourselves like that and not allow us the flexibility to make changes regardless of the phase.
So in
Thank you.
effect, you're saying that if we don't approve this plan, we won't approve any plan.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, in order to create an environment where there's at least what we've proposed with virtual sections and a face-to-face section, that involves quite a bit of planning and timing. And if we don't do that prior to the start of second semester, that portion there has no chance once the semester starts. So, and you know, like I said, if we moved into phase 5, who knows, we may not. But if we did, and we said, well, we're going to bring all students back, well, we know that that's not a reality, because we know that families and some of our students won't be back. We know that moving into 21, 22, we may have a large group of families that are with a virtual option, and we need to be prepared for that going into next summer. But you know, that's too far ahead. We're talking a little more short term tonight, but so I worry a little bit about that in terms of just not having that flexibility to make some changes as we go. You know, we're hopeful that things will improve, you know, we have to be, but you know, what can we do now in order to set the stage to bring some folks back into our buildings? I think that's really what we're about tonight.
But hybrid or high flex could do that.
Yeah, it could, Terry. Yeah, and
Thanks.
I would want to make sure if we brought that as an option, is that we had teachers behind that model, because last time we brought that, they weren't, right? So I'm mindful of that. And you know, we had a lot of families that were against that hybrid as well. You know, in terms of, you know, if we go hybrid, you know, does that limit the attention that my face-to-face student gets because the teacher has to focus on virtual and vice versa? So, you know, all that still exists in the conversation, and I don't forget about that stuff, because we got waves of that in terms of the negative response to the hybrid. So that's still there fresh in my mind, because that wasn't too far long ago that we heard that pushback on it. But you know, if things have changed a little bit and teachers are a little bit more open-minded about accepting that as a primary, then you know, I would say, you know, we should probably keep that, you know, in our back pocket if we move forward. And like Rusty said, it's just too much to process and handle. But you know, again, we're going to know that based off of family selections and once our scheduling teams get to work and start trying to piece all this together.
Michael, it's Rusty here.
Hey, Rusty.
One question about the town halls and the timing. What is the date again when parents must make their decision?
You're on mute, Mike.
Oh, my apologies. I thought I unmuted it. I got the documents up right here. So our town halls for both of the high schools are from November 30th through December 2nd. There's a December 1st town hall for the middle schools. And we're trying to have families make their decision by the 3rd of December. So we wanted, a lot of this information is out there, but we know we would like them to have that back, and we wanted to do those town halls after the Thanksgiving holiday was done. So that's kind of the timeline right now for those families that don't complete or are struggling to, you know, get in, whether it's a Skyward issue or not. To do follow up with those families and get back information from them. We'd like to be complete by December 4th.
Okay, and just one more comment. Hopefully this is my last one. Back to the high flex and hybrid, and there might be some staff pushback, but then if we do go into this model that we're proposing, and I'm for it, unless it just becomes a, you know, lots of challenges. What are we looking at for staff? Say, like I think we indicated earlier, you know, a teacher may be teaching face-to-face first hour and virtual second hour, and then a totally different class third hour potentially. Are we talking about multiple preps here?
Yeah, currently right now at the high school, at that level, they can have anywhere from 2 to 4 preps. I imagine we have a few teachers that are even higher than that, like 5 or 6. I know of a few that are close to that. And yes, each of those would be its own unique prep and may have one of those modes attached to it. So it might be, you know, 2 classes of in-person Algebra 1, then I've got a virtual class of Algebra 2, then an in-person Algebra 2, then I have a geometry virtual. So it is both mixed in terms of the preps that they have, and also most likely in terms of the mode of instruction as well.
So would say a Geometry 1 virtual prep be all that different from a Geometry 1 face-to-face prep?
There will probably be some. I mean, obviously the prep will be different just because of the mode of instruction. So virtual prep will involve more, you know, Google Slides and instruction that's done on the webcams and whatnot. And in person will involve the, you know, the students there and preparing those documents that way. I spoke to a couple of team leaders, not explicitly about what it takes to prepare, you know, a class, and will we be able to look at what the instructional mode looks like, and can we synchronize that instruction, or is that something that our end of semester targets will be the same? And it leaned more towards the end of semester targets being the same. So those classes might not pace exactly identically if they're in person or virtual. So if you had a Geometry 2 and another Geometry 2 class that's virtual, that may look different or be slightly off pace from each other.
You know, just an off comment here. I've heard some rumblings in the community about some of the online. Now, I teach my kids to always be 100% honest. And so there are a lot of people saying with this online stuff, there's a lot of honor code, and people feel like a lot of kids are cheating. So especially when you go into curbing grades, you know, it'll be interesting to see if the kids in class don't score as well as the kids online, because the kids online will have a better opportunity because nobody's really watching them. I've heard that multiple times. I really don't know how all the tests happen. But there's nothing you can do about it, except maybe when you curve classes, maybe you curve them separately from the in class versus the virtual. You know, I don't know. I don't care about grades. Grades aren't important. They've become a little bit more important this year because the SAT has become less important. But you know, learning, as I've always taught my kids, is more important. I'd rather them take a tough teacher and get a B or a C than take an easy teacher and get an A, because it's not about getting grades, it's about learning. So I don't know how you guys can address that, but it's an interesting aspect that's happening here.
That certainly is, especially given the nature of assessment and what we're trying to do by assessment. A lot of times assessment is designed as feedback for students, not necessarily to just put a grade in a grade book. That's kind of our goal and our intent. So It is difficult. There's no doubt assessment has had to change in this virtual environment because of the very nature of even our own, the learning that we do as adults. We have Google right next to us to do that learning. And so the authenticity in learning is around process now, and is around project, and is around application of the knowledge, as opposed to just rote memorization and use of the tool. So that's some of the changes that have happened. So, but we know there's still more learning for us to do in that environment, whether we are face-to-face or virtual. Either of those modes will continue to be good learners of student learning.
Any other questions for our presenters tonight? Well, thank you, gentlemen, and thank you on behalf of the board for all the work you've done and all the time you've put into these recommendations. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, Randy, I'll just let me add my own thanks to the presentation tonight and for the questions as well. I mean, those are the same issues that we've been wrestling with over the course of the fall, and hopefully we were able to answer the questions that you had in a way that helped clear your thinking about where we're headed. And I hope you really think of this not so much as a change in the preparedness plan, but really opening the door for those kids who need that door open for themselves, that don't have the supports that Rusty talked about, that his family provides for his children. We have a lot of students that need that face-to-face support, and really hope that you're looking at this as a door opener for those kids. So thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Mark. We'll move to our comments and communications section. And first we have comments from citizens, and I believe we have 3 tonight. And I would ask Celeste to please read our guidelines for public comment. Celeste, are you there?
Okay, I'm here.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Sorry, I thought I was got a little frog in my throat here. The board welcomes community input at our public meetings. When addressing the board, please conform to these guidelines as follows. Sign this, well, we won't have to worry about that. Sign the speaker registration, but that is to inform the board that you are planning on making a presentation. State your name and address. Limit your comments to 3 minutes. Provide a written copy of your comments and supporting documentation to the board secretary if available. Present your comments in a respectful and professional manner. Refrain from mentioning any student by name and contact the superintendent directly regarding personnel matters. Board of Education members are not obligated to respond to issues raised during public comment. Normally, such issues are referred to the superintendent for follow-up.
Thank you, Celeste. And we now look forward to hearing from our first speaker.
Yes, caller with a phone number ending in 03, you are first in queue. Please remember to state your name and unmute your phone with *6, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Katie Tanich, and I teach Spanish at Portage Northern High School. I live at 930 Westmoreland. First, I do want to acknowledge all of the hard work that both you and the administration have done all over these past 9 months as we wade through these uncertain waters. I know it cannot be easy to make these decisions when you guys have so many stakeholders with opposing needs and desires. I don't disagree that face-to-face instruction with the teacher is preferable. I really do miss my students a lot. I miss seeing their faces. I miss interacting with them in my classroom. I do want to assert that our students are in school, though. Even though they're not physically in our classrooms, we do have a lot of learning taking place. They are in school. And as I tell my students, you can't say virtual school without saying school. So I would ask you to, look into the multitude of successes that are within our district, because we sometimes focus so much on the negativity with 2020. As Rusty said, this plan, it has a lot of pros to it, but it also has a lot of cons, as Terry also said. And Rusty said, had a nice analogy that it's kind of like banging a square peg into a round hole. It's very complicated, it's convoluted, and it seems to be elevating the anxiety for all of our major stakeholders, students and parents and teachers. And I know that 50% of our Portage families surveyed in October said that they wanted to come back to a face-to-face environment. But I did want to share with you some parent concerns that I have seen that are coming from two places. The first one is a Facebook parent group called Portage Parents for Safe Learning that has 1,000 members, over 1,000 members, which are 1,000 parents in the Portage family. And the other one is coming from a document compiled by Jim French, which is on Portage Northern website, and it's a frequently asked question document regarding this actual plan. And these were some of the concerns that have stood out to me that I just, hearing from the comments from the board tonight really stood out to me that I thought that you would like to hear. The first one was, how can we make an informed decision? If my child was not a senior, I would have told him to go homeschool this year. And that really struck me. I don't understand why Portage thinks they need to do something different. Other schools are trying to meet face-to-face and dealing with quarantines and 2-week closures and struggling with continuity of learning. Let the teachers continue in the mode of learning they have adapted to and wait for science to give the okay to face-to-face. The next one says, I was shocked to read that in-person students who are exposed to COVID-positive students will be unable to switch to virtual while quarantining with no teacher instruction. And I do want to clarify that this was said. Terry is 100% correct. That was the information given to building principals, and the principals then shared that to teachers. Students who are under quarantine are treated or will be treated like they are normally when they're ill from normal school, from face-to-face. So all of the learning and makeup work will be done on their own. That was what was given to us from our building principals, and that information was given to them. So that information might need to be readdressed by Dr. Pasco and Mr. Huber if that is not accurate. Another parent said, so much uncertainty for our kids at this time when they need as much stability as possible. And the last one that I wanted to comment, as this parent says, schedules are going to be redone for second semester in the hopes that kids return to school, even if it's not until March or April. Class sizes and course offerings will be different, even though everyone will still be virtual, and that is not equitable, which, this is me again, which will be true. Virtual classes will be capped at 40 students, but in-person classes will be capped at 22. So you do have some inequity there in terms of how classes will be run. This person ends by saying, and I quote, changing everybody's schedule for the hope of returning does not make sense because we don't know how long into semester 2 it will be before face-to-face can actually happen. These are not my words. Few of them were. These are not my words. These are words of Portage parents, and I'm asking you to listen to them and perhaps think twice about voting yes to this plan. Again, it seems much like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, and I don't think it's going to work for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
All right, our next caller, the number ends in 30. Again, please state your name and use *6 to unmute.
Hello. Hello, this is Ken Odza. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. I appreciate the time. So I'm Ken Odza. I'm a parent of 2 students at Portage Northern High School. And I'm speaking out tonight against the new Return to Learn preparedness plan. But I make this opposition really appreciating how much work that staff and the board has put into it, and knowing that our board and our staff has nothing but the right intentions here. I also really, really appreciate how much the school board and our staff has done throughout the pandemic to both ensure the safety of our kids and to provide the most robust learning options possible in this really challenging environment. So as the parent of two high school students at Portage Northern, it seems that, in listening to the discussion tonight, it seems that the one problem that the district should be solving for, they didn't really see addressed, though I know some of the board members were kind of getting at it, is how to keep our students and staff safe, yet provide as much normalcy and predictability for our kids into this, very difficult school year. Additional uncertainty is just the very last thing our kids need right now. And I think that this plan really overlooks that, because just by approving this plan tonight and asking next week for families to make choices without any information about what this is going to look like, who their teachers are going to be, what classes they'll be able to take, not be able to take, you are truly undermining what little normalcy and predictability there is today. And I know there's not a lot, but as the teacher just spoke a few minutes ago and was pointing out, there has been some success, and this is really to your credit. It's not ideal, but the virtual learning has at least created a new sense of temporary normalcy. And let me also just point out that, let me explain what I mean, and I'll explain that in a minute, but I just want to also first point out, just in response to the presentation tonight, that this is really the first time this plan has been shared with parents, at least at Northern High School, was only a few days ago. So there have been no parent forums, no real parent consideration of this plan at all. And I know time is tight and staff is working against the clock, but I think it's really time for us to at least spend a week or two, pause on approving this plan, and compare, as the board was kind of hinting at earlier, a hybrid plan side by side with this, because it very well might be that once folks see both of that, that if we do have a chance to go back at all this year in person, that hybrid is probably the simpler approach and might make more sense. And I think it's absolute must to do that before you make a decision. I don't see how you can make a decision before looking at both. And the reason, let me just explain a little more about why this plan really undermines the normalcy and predictability our kids have in this proposal. So number one, I think, as I was saying, this creates uncertainty, because our kids won't know who their teachers are or who their classes will be really until they're into final exams in January. And if you are going face-to-face, this is going to create new uncertainties, as folks have pointed out, about the timing and safety protocols that will be in place, and the type of learning that will be in place if and inevitability when quarantines are necessary. So while I appreciate the work the district has put into this today, the work that will be needed to pull off the plan logistically by creating a new master calendar, it feels like we're really taking a bad situation full of uncertainty already, given the pandemic and things out of anybody's control, and making it much worse, making it even more unpredictable and disruptive for our kids. Last thing I want to say is a concern about timing. And I don't think the district is being realistic about when they might be able to go back in any kind of hybrid or face-to-face learning. I think everyone knows the numbers in the county are bleak. They're not likely to improve in a way, at least before March. Most of our experts would tell us in a way that would get us into a stage 5 or 6. Vaccines, while there's fantastic news on that, they're not expected to be widely available until at least late spring. And then you're at spring break, right? Which will even create potential for more spread. So realistically, I think the board really needs to think about, it's not going to be realistic that any face-to-face instruction probably would be realistic in the high schools until April or May. And if face-to-face couldn't begin until April or May in the final weeks of the school year, is it worth the incredible disruption to our kids' schedule and school staff to redo the entire master calendar, upend everybody's schedules in January? The answer to that has to be no. So somebody made the analogy about the airplane while flying. I think we're definitely building the airplane while flying, and we're all doing this in our own workplaces and our own families. So I completely empathize with what the district is trying to do. But my suggestion is go back to the teachers, the parents, other stakeholders, revisit the simpler, less disruptive hybrid model before blowing up the airplane that we currently are all flying, right, and trying to work on. So, you know, trusted the school board to guide us through this incredible, unprecedented time, giving our children a predictable, steady, and safe chance for a solid education. I'm sure my household isn't the only one giving this trust. I'm also certain that we're not the only ones questioning the reasoning and ultimate likely outcome of the proposed plan. And as the comment maker before me said, the FAQs are telling, it sounds like the board members are also getting contacts. And the fact that nobody knew about this plan until 2 or 3 days ago, and there's already a lot of concern about it, tells you that it's time to slow down and at least take another week or two and compare this side by side. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Our last speaker, please.
Yes, caller ending in 78. Again, please announce your name and remember it's *6 to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Lisa St. Peter, and I live at 6118 Sablewood Circle in Portage. I also want to thank you guys for all the hard work you guys have put in. This is not at all easy, and of course you're going to be come at by all sides, by all different opinions, so I want to thank you guys for that. I wrote something out because I'm not good at thinking on my feet. So this is what I have. These are my concerns. That I have this plan is going to throw the students and teacher schedules into complete chaos at a time when our kids need as much stability as possible. Parents were told that it is unknown when schedule for second semester would be finalized. Nobody even knows when it will be safe for our kids to return to school. Why cause our students and teachers stress when we don't even know when in-person is possible? It could be a month or two in the second semester before it is safe. In the meantime, you have changed everyone's schedule around and have some virtual classes with 40 students and some with 22. Not to mention that you've disrupted many of the relationships students have made with their teachers and other students in full year classes. Parents were also told we had to make a choice between face-to-face and virtual without knowing what courses are being offered in each option. The flaw in this plan is that we can't know until choices are made. And the administration keeps talking about fair and equitable learning. How can classes be fair and equitable if face-to-face has 22 students per class and virtual classes can have as many as 40 students in a class? It can't. Virtual teachers are going to have twice as many work for those classes, and students are going to have twice as much trouble getting a hold of their teachers in order to get help. I have one student that would love to go back to school, hates the idea of having his schedule overturned. All but one of his classes are year-round classes, and he loves his teachers, he likes the kids he's in class with, and just hates the idea of losing that stability. I have one that wants to stay online, and he's scared that he's going to lose the same stability he has. And the administration keeps referencing the last survey that had 50% of families wanting face-to-face learning. But I argue that these results for the using these results for the proposed plan is faulty. I don't think anyone filling out the survey would have ever thought that a plan proposed would completely change our kids' schedules and throw second semester into such upheaval. If the survey were given today with this plan in mind, I'd bet the results would be quite different. I agree with that. It feels very rushed. I got the email from Portage Northern on Thursday, and just out of the blue, I never would have thought in a million years this was the plan that would be coming. I agree with the last two speakers that I think a survey needs to go back out to parents and teachers with both options and see where the chips lie after that, because they are totally different plans. So just thank you for your time, and again for all the effort you guys have put in.
Lisa, thank you very much for your comments. We'll now move to comments from board trustees, please.
Hey, Randy, this is Bo. Can I go first tonight?
Yes, sir.
First, a thanks to our 3 community speakers, thoughtful, high quality comments. And I think it's really good that they spoke. I mean, that's the kind of feedback I think trustees have been getting via email. It's good to expose the administrative team to those comments too. So appreciate the comments from the speakers. And then my other thought here is, hey, Joanne, it's good to hear your voice. Welcome back. I'm glad you're feeling well enough to be with us tonight, and hope you continue to get better. All right. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you, Bo. Anyone else?
Randy, it's Rusty, so I'll go next. I guess first of all, as I stated earlier, I'm like the unique board member, and I'm more unique in this community and in the entire staff. I have 2 kids in high school, but I also have a wife on the front lines, and she truly is. I mean, she spent 7 days last week taking care of COVID patients as their physician, and her name is on a few death certificates. So this stuff hits home at our house. So I want to thank admin, for I mean, it was controversial to send kids home from the elementary buildings. But it was probably the right thing to do to protect this community. Like I said, we've been watching those numbers go up, and it's concerning. We don't know where it's coming from. It could be coming from restaurants. It could be coming from elementary buildings. It could be coming from a lot of places, but nobody knows. So anyways, it wasn't an easy decision to make. But I can promise you, we maybe saved a few lives or a few hospitalizations, because it's not easy. It's not easy watching grown men cry, not being able to see people not being able to see their spouses while some of them are potentially passing. It's a very serious situation that some of these frontliners are facing. So, Mark, hats off to you. I know that wasn't an easy decision, but you guys moved fast, and you potentially saved some lives. So thank you.
Thanks, Rusty. Anyone else?
Randy, I just wanted to just clarify for me that the purpose of the approval is to allow the administration team to continually collect data for safe reentry, correct? Otherwise, otherwise, and yes, otherwise, if and when we do return to a better situation of returning face-to-face totally, except for those who choose virtual, we will not be able to do so.
Because the preparedness plan does not have that option in it as it stands.
Okay, so that means that we would have to continue through June virtual as is. Pretty much.
I guess that's pretty much how it is.
Okay,
yes.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that piece. Because right now, so many things are going through my mind, and I'm looking at January, and I'm also looking at, that's also the time that students often make plans for the next school year. This just seems like so much going on right now, and it's very mind-boggling. So I just wanted to clarify what it means for the approval or not approval for the plan that has been presented.
Thank you, Celeste. Anyone else?
Okay, following Celeste's question, my understanding is that we're voting on approval of this plan, and that we cannot implement this plan if we don't approve it now because of the scheduling component that's involved. Is that incorrect?
Mark, could you speak to that, please?
So what you're approving are changes to the preparedness plan. And this is our approach to implementing the changes that would be in the plan. So this provides us with the ability to move forward with ours. So you're not necessarily approving a specific plan that we're presenting, but you're approving our ability to move forward with a face-to-face plan.
But if we approve this plan, we're approving this plan. So we're saying, yes, you may go ahead with this plan if that's what you choose to do.
Yes, that's another yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Terry. Any other comments from trustees?
Yeah, Randy, it's just Rusty here. Just a point of clarification. We had a little bit of discussion, and maybe we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that when we go into the action portion of this discussion.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? Well, be it Thanksgiving, we'd be remiss if we didn't thank our teachers, our staff, and our administration for all the work they're doing for students this year. Especially want to point out the fact that our elementary teachers had to make a quick pivot to virtual with the pause in those schools' operations. And on behalf of the board, we just hope everyone at Portage Public Schools has a great Thanksgiving, and you can get away from this for a little while and relax. Thank you very much. Are there any board committee reports this evening? Okay, hearing none, we will move to our consent agenda on page 9. We have 4 items tonight. The first item is approval of minutes from the November 9th, 2020 Policy Governance Retreat, Committee of the Whole work session, and the closed session minutes. And then the next 4 items were all reviewed with the board at our November 9th work study. The first was that we approved the summer tax collection resolution that authorizes Portage Public Schools to continue its summer tax collections in 2021 as presented. The next item is that the board authorized as presented the purchase of servers and related items for a replacement VDI server cluster from Dell Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $234,758.70, the proceeds for which will come from the COVID-19 Relief Fund. And finally, that the Board of Education authorized as presented the purchase of additional data storage to support a new VDI server cluster from Raymond in an amount not to exceed $303,020, the proceeds for which will come from the COVID-19 Relief Fund. Are there any exceptions to the consent agenda as presented? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved, and we'll move to our first required action item, and that is a policy revision from MIOSHA on page 32. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the policy revision as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
I can second.
All right, very good. Thank you. Mark, do you want to explain this quickly?
Well, basically, MIOSHA issued some emergency orders regarding COVID-19, and one of the requirements of that order was that all employers need to create a policy that prohibits in-person work for employees to the extent that their work activities can be conducted remotely. So this policy was generated in that light. We have established the our internal procedures for identifying who can and cannot work from in person on site. So this keeps the board in compliance with the rules. There is I don't know what the monitoring system is, but there is a fine associated to organizations that don't have a policy that they can provide to MIOSHA. So it's one of those things that we have to do if you want to be in compliance.
Any questions for Mark on this one? Okay, we'll take the roll call vote, please, Barb.
Mrs. Wilson? Mr. Rathburn?
I think she dropped off the phone, Barb. Sorry.
Okay. Mr. Rathburn?
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Shelton Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Mrs. Novaria,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Droppers.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. The motion to revise policy is approved. Our next item on page 35 is approve the update of the Return to Learn Preparedness Plan. Is there a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make the following motion that the Board of Education approve the updated preparedness plan for 2020 to 2021 as presented.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Bo. Discussion.
Sure. Go ahead, Rusty.
Well, I just want to reiterate, Mike and Mike, we're putting a lot of trust in you if we pass this plan. You know, a video is set out to parents this afternoon. So I got a lot of I had a lot of communications this afternoon, and I would have rather gotten them this weekend because I had a busy day. But I had to answer them. I had to take some phone calls. So I just want to encourage you, if we pass this, we're going to need a lot of information. So I just keep it coming. We need to monitor it. I still want kids in the building, but like I said, I don't want the square peg in a round hole situation. I don't want it to be a mess for kids, for staff, for families. So, you know, I just really want to know what's going along the way. And I want us to keep the option if I'm voting, it's under the impression, if I vote yes, it's under the impression that the high flex plan will still be considered. Could somebody confirm that?
Well, I can, you know, I think you heard loud and clear from Dr. Pascal that, you know, as we continue to move forward with this, that we're not going to, you know, turn a blind eye to something else that could work better. So, yeah, I think you heard us say that we will keep, you know, all options on the table as we move forward. However, there is a point at which we have to look somewhere. And if we're going to get schedules changed for second semester and to move ahead. So as much as time allows, we will continue to keep options open.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say again that I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I'm just extremely uncomfortable with this proposal. I don't think it's best for kids, and I'm sorry that I will be unable to support it because I appreciate your work, but I just can't do it.
Thank you, Terry.
Randy, this is Bo. I'll go next, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, you know, good discussion earlier. You know, I had reservations, but I think the right thing to do now is to approve the plan because that opens the door to face-to-face starting the second semester, and for us to express our reservations, get an update in December, and kind of encourage the administrative team to kind of keep their options open and kind of keep exploring, because I'm not quite sure what the best fork in the road here it is, but I think it's important that we get that in-person option, you know, teed up for the second semester. So I think we did that tonight. I thought we had a very good discussion. None of this stuff is easy. Everywhere you turn in this crazy house of mirrors, you know, there's another issue that people get concerned about. And so, anyway, I will have a yes vote. I encourage our administrative team to kind of keep open to the options, and you know, and certainly want an update at our December meeting and our January meetings. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you, Bo. Anyone else?
Yeah, Randy, Rusty again. I'm sorry. I just like to reiterate to because both said at updates at our meetings. I would probably hope to maybe have some in between meetings too, whether those are communications to the public. I think I just really I have a lot of anxiety right now. I just wanted to let everybody know where I stand. I have a lot of anxiety that this plan could make a lot of people look bad. So just that's how I feel. Thank you.
Thanks, Rusty. Anyone else?
Hey, Randy, Bo again with just a quick thought. I'm not advocating that we add special board meetings, but if we need to add a special board meeting to kind of stay abreast, I'd be all for it. Just want to get on the record. Yep.
Certainly. Anyone else? Well, I'd just like to say here, again, thank you to administration and Michael and Mike for putting all this together for us. And I look at this as an opportunity to do better for the kids by providing a face-to-face option along with a virtual option. To do that, the state requires us to include face-to-face instruction for secondary student preparedness plan. If we don't, we lose that option and flexibility to provide face-to-face instruction when our region might move to phase 4, even though it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. We're certainly not going to implement any form of face-to-face instruction if health and safety concerns don't allow it. And administration has admitted that this isn't a perfect plan. They're going to remain flexible, make additional adjustments during the planning process to potentially include some hybrid options. And it's just really important that, we move forward so the district learns what enrollment will look like for students in face-to-face and virtual. It's really the way the public will be voting on this plan. It's been 9 months since our middle school and high school students have been in a classroom to enjoy the benefits of face-to-face instruction. We've seen the impact on grades. We've seen the impact on social emotional well-being. And, as everybody knows, face-to-face is best for students, and the virtual instruction isn't going to be a substitute for it. 50% of our parents want their students back in class. And we get some letters from folks that are, desperate to have their students back in class. I'm going to read from just one or two here. My first grader attends Lake Central Elementary and loves her 4 days of face-to-face instruction. But I'm witnessing my 6th and 9th grade daughters declining mentally and physically. My 9th grader has declined to the point where we sought medical attention. She's now on a mild antidepressant. And that's no indictment of the virtual instruction that's going on here, but it's new to everyone and it's not for everyone. Another parent asked, does being a secondary student mean being bored, confused, and isolated? I mean, we've got to give these people some hope that there's a possibility that maybe they can get back into school and benefit from face-to-face instruction. Health and safety of student staff permitting, particularly as we go into winter, there's going to be a lot of gray days. And having that option to be face-to-face might just be a bright spot in a number of folks' days. So anyway, I'm pleased to vote for the plan, and we'll ask if there's any more comments from board members.
Randy, I'm sorry. You touched a note with me. It's so important because you mentioned the word hope, and I left that out tonight. I know a lot of kids are struggling, as you said. I know my kids are struggling, but if they just knowing there's the potential to for kids to come back, giving them hope, is so important. So I know half the kids need that, they want that, and hope is really important.
You've been saying that all along, Rusty. Thanks.
Randy, just one more piece. I'm trying to wrap my brain around the decision that parents are required to make or asked to make by December 3rd, which is next week, right? So my question is, do they have enough information and to make that sound decision for their family? And the other part of that is, if health and or family situations change, are they stuck where they are? I know that, moving from virtual to face-to-face, or more so face-to-face to virtual, could become a revolving door. But my question is, how strict are we on that? Or can it be a case-by-case situation?
Celeste, and Michael or Mike, chime in, please, if I'm misspeaking here, but I believe we'll be asking parents to make a choice that they commit to for as long as we're in that particular mode. I mean, it's the only way we can schedule students and know what our numbers will be. So, I just want to say also that that's in part why we're having the town hall meetings to our principals, so they can answer those questions. So parents have as much information as possible before they're being asked to make a commitment.
So parents are asked to make a commitment without knowing how this whole thing might turn out. I understand that, it's the chicken or the egg. You need to know who wants to be in what mode in order to do scheduling. I get that. But then scheduling is going to be an important piece for parents. It just is. It's going to be a big concern for parents, how that scheduling is going to disrupt what they currently are accustomed to.
I can't argue with that. I mean, it's going to be disruptive for a lot of people. Has that potential? Yes, but until we know how many parents want to go one way or the other, we're kind of in that limbo area until we have more information.
So hopefully parents will get the answers that they need from the town halls.
I think the town halls will hopefully answer some of the questions they have. Some of the questions are going to be hard to answer depending on what those questions are, because we won't know until we know how many parents elect which option. But we will try to answer as many questions as we can so that they can make as informed a decision as possible.
Okay.
And Michael or Mike, if there's anything you want to add to that, please do.
Yeah, I think in the video we tried to forecast, some of the impacts and try to be transparent with folks as to what, even the negative impacts would be in terms of this proposal and this plan. So, and some of it we just don't know. We don't know what all those impacts are. And even and some of it might not even happen. We don't know the level, like Mark said, until we see those selections. And I will say this, I'm sure we'll receive communications throughout this week and going into next week. And like Rusty had mentioned, maybe there'll be more opportunity for us to put some stuff out there, whether it's another video with a Q&A and really looking at the themes of questions and the stuff and the feedback that we get. Just to make sure that, the video that we put out, which was filmed last week, by the way, we just weren't able to get it out until today. Maybe we put something out to kind of reinforce or just clarify. So maybe that will help as well. And I agree, Celeste. I want people to make a selection based off of what the experience will actually be, as much as we know about it right now. And again, we all know we don't know 100% of it, but we can forecast some things, and some we'll learn as we're doing. Others will be proactive and we'll be able to prepare. So maybe it's about just collecting that feedback as we go throughout the week, and then making sure that we send out a potential another communication outside of the town halls, just to make sure that, one, we're being as transparent as possible, but also we're trying to answer as many questions as we go.
Thanks,
Any
Mike.
other comments or questions? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote, please, Barb.
Mr. Rathburn,
I vote yes for hope.
Dr. Shelton Harris,
I'm saying yes with reservations.
Mr. Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Mrs. Navaria,
No.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Droppers,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson? Not there.
Thanks, Barb. And thank you, trustees. The motion passes. The preparedness plan is approved. Thank you. Our last action item this evening is on page 60, administrator appointments. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve as presented the appointment of the following administrators for Portage Public Schools. Mr. Zach Crouch as interim principal for Mooresbridge Elementary, and Dr. Mackenzie Sheehan as elementary virtual administrator.
Thank you, Bo. Is there a second, please?
Second, please.
Thank you, Kurt. Brad, did you want to say anything about these fine folks?
I will, just briefly. Obviously, with our loss at Mooresbridge of Mrs. Kirschman, moving forward and filling in with Mr. Zach Crouch, who has really been at her right hand for the past few years, and so we're confident in his abilities and what he's learned, and just say that he's already stepped up doing some wonderful things to support the staff and students of Mooresbridge Elementary. So we're really pleased to be able to bring Zach officially onto the administrative team. And then our second mention tonight for Dr. Mackenzie Sheehan. So Mackenzie has been with the district now for several years and has played some critical roles in our curriculum development, as well as the ongoing evolution of our MTSS process throughout the district. One of the feedbacks that we've gotten over these past couple months from both teachers and parents who are in the elementary virtual program is wondering who they go to. And our current elementary principals continue to do a fabulous job supporting them, but we also want to be able to provide some additional support there and kind of point of contact for folks to go to if they weren't sure who to go to. Keep in mind, with the numbers that we have, our elementary virtual program is 2 times larger than what our largest elementary school is in a normal year. So we have a lot of kids there, so we felt like we needed to put some supports in place for that. And Dr. Sheehan is well versed in that, has already been doing a lot of the job, in all honesty. So we're looking to move her officially into this role.
Very good, Brad. Thank you. Any questions from board members? Barb, roll call vote, please.
Dr. Shelton Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Van Antwerp,
Yes.
Mrs. Navaria,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Droppers,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson, Mr. Rathburn,
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much. The administrator appointments are approved, and congratulations to Mr. Crouch and Dr. Sheehan. Thank you very much. We've reached the end of our agenda. Thank you, trustees, for your good work this evening. And happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And we are adjourned. Thank you.